Good evening, and welcome to the monthly membership meeting of the Syracuse Onondaga NAACP. My name is Bishop Colette Matthews Carter, and I'm honored to serve as the branch's president. This month's meeting is brought to you by the Civic Engagement Committee. The focus this evening is on voting and GOTV, which is the acronym for Get Out the Vote. Civic engagement and political representation is one of the game changers for the NAACP. Voting is fundamental to US democracy, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is a bedrock law protecting every American's right to register to vote and cast their ballot. The Voting Rights Act remains one of the hardest fought safeguards for Black Americans and other minority groups. Yet today, threats to fair, safe elections persist. Attempts to restore the act to its fullest protections include the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, introduced in early 2019. Here's a few quick facts for you. White men aged 21 and older who owned property were given the right to vote in 1776. The 15th Amendment to the Constitution removed racial barriers to voting in 1870, but states continued to practice voter discrimination and continued to deny Black voters a chance to participate in elections. The right to vote was extended to white women in 1920. But it wasn't until 1965, after years of intimidation, murders, and advocacy, that the path to the voting booth was cleared for Black people with the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965. Original legislators hoped that within 5 years of its passage, the issues surrounding the 1965 Voting Rights Act would be resolved, and there would be no further need for its enforcement-related provisions. They were wrong. Congress had to extend these provisions in 1970, 1975, 1982, and most recently in 2007, this time for 25 years. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 remains one of the hardest fought safeguards for Black Americans and other minority groups as it relates to voting. The power, agency, and access to vote is a civil right for all. The most recent attempt to strengthen the right to vote is the John Lewis Voting Rights Amendment Act, introduced in Congress in early 2019. The proposed bill was renamed following the passing of civil rights activist and longtime House of Representatives member, John R. Lewis. So this evening, we are pleased to share a Q&A with you from our Board of Election Commissioners, Dustin Czarney and Michele Sardo. This Q&A is facilitated by Reverend Eric Jackson, our second vice president, and I hope that you find it informational as it relates to GOTV, Get Out the Vote.
I'm Dustin Czarney. I'm the Democratic Elections Commissioner.
And I'm Michele Sardo, the Republican Election Commissioner.
So Reverend, I'm going to turn it over to you now. And I'm just on here for any technical difficulties.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out and speak with us. And we wanted to focus our general membership meeting on voting. And I'm so glad that you both have taken the time to help demystify some, not only demystify, but also to answer some of our questions that people from our branch or viewing our general membership meeting might have about voting. So I want to get, Diane, are we good to go ahead and get right into it with the questions?
Yes, please. We have a list of questions and information we want to get, so let's start.
So, you know, one of the things that I'll never forget, particularly during one presidential election, where I went to just pick up some wings and to watch and see how the election would just turn out. I kind of have like a little watch party at home some years ago. And, I'm a big advocate for increasing voter turnout and for people to exercise their right to vote. And I always go around asking people on election day, did you vote? Well, as I was picking up my food from the restaurant restaurant worker said to me, she said, you know, I did not vote because my one vote would not count. And I think her sentiment is what resonates with so many people, that my vote will not count. So why is it important to vote.
Well,
Every vote counts.
yeah, that's true.
Every vote counts. And Dustin and I make sure, and I know other boards of elections are the same way. We make sure that every vote counts. So yes, go out and vote.
So, voting is how we communicate to government our needs. And it's really the only way we can communicate to government our needs. And so if you're not voting, then you are not telling the government what your values are and what you want them to portray as values in governing you and serving you as your elected representative. And I can tell you, every election there is a race that comes down to just a handful of votes. Every single election, whether it's not just president, it's not just senator or congressperson. You have your local town or city elections. The mayoral primary for city of Syracuse, for example, came down to 22 votes this last election. So that determines who's going to go on to the general election. These things matter, and they may not matter in every race, but every vote gets counted in every race.
Thank you. Michele, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No.
Okay.
Dustin's right. Exactly what he said was perfect.
All right. So next question is, how can people find out what is on the ballot for this election and who is running for what offices?
They can call our office. We can send them a sample ballot. They can look their name up on our website, and their sample ballot is attached to their name, so they can look it up and review it before they even go in and vote.
Thank you. Anything
Yeah,
to
and
add,
it's-
Dustin?
Well, it's important to remember where your polling place is, especially on election day. For early voting, you can go to any of our sites. But on election day, you have to go to your assigned polling place. So knowing ahead of time where you're supposed to go by going to our website. And if your address has changed between now, between election day and the time you moved, you may not have had a chance to update it with us. Then you have to do an affidavit ballot at your new polling place for your vote to count. So it's important to know where you're supposed to vote and where you're registered at. And if there's any problems, call your local board of elections or give us a call here in Onondaga County at 315-435-VOTE.
Thank you.
And I think maybe too is that once again to note that your website is ongov.net, and then they go and they click on Board of Elections and can find out a lot of information.
No, they can go right to onvote.net and goes right to the Board of Elections. We instituted that a couple of years ago, and it saves them a step.
Good.
Oh, wonderful. So, talking about the ballot and who's running for office this year, the ballot this time is double-sided, and there are going to be propositions on the back of the ballot this year. So could you both give us some details really about what these propositions are that people are being asked to vote on in detail this year?
Yeah, so there's 5 propositions. The first proposition is a redistricting change. This limits the number of Senate seats to 63 and makes it easier for the majorities in the legislature to vote on maps if the redistricting commission that is currently going on cannot come to a conclusion. Number 2 is the environmental proposition. This gives a right to clean air and water in the New York State Constitution. It actually writes the language in. A lot of environmentalists are supporting it. Number 3 is reducing the number of days or eliminating the 10-day registration deadline. This would make it a ability to have same-day registration in New York. And number 4 is no fault absentee. This is removing the requirement that you have to have a reason to vote by absentee. The last couple of years, we've had the pandemic as a reason, but this would eliminate that altogether, and anybody could request at any time. And then number 5 is the City Court of New York. Many people don't realize that New York City Court is written into our Constitution, and so everywhere in New York has to vote on it if they're having a change. Did I miss anything, Michele?
There are also 3 areas around the county that have Village of Camillus, Village of Tully, and the town of Geddes have the cannabis reform proposals. So those will be voted on in those areas, and also town of Manlius.
The cannabis ones, it can be confusing because it's an opt-out. So if you're voting yes, you opt out to have the cannabis retail stores. You're voting against having them in your community. And if you
Correct.
vote yes, it means you want them. I mean, you vote no. See, I'm already doing it.
Sorry, yeah, you got it.
Yeah,
I was about to say,
it's-
you got that mixed up. It's,
Yeah,
if you want the dispensaries, you have to vote no. If you
Right.
don't want the dispensaries, you have to vote yes. It's a little weird, yes.
So speaking of voting and municipalities, do you have to re-register to vote if you have moved since the last election? And can you still vote this time if you didn't update your new address with the Board of Elections?
yes, you should. We try to encourage people, if they move, they just can change their address with us. And that's easy enough to do. Just call our office. We'll send them a registration form, or they can go on the DMV website and change their address that way. And if they didn't change their address, they can do an affidavit ballot at the polls. Affidavit ballot, they'll have to fill out the form, and it's a registration form, so they'll be able to, they won't vote on the machine, they'll vote an affidavit ballot, and they can just re-register off of that.
So what I'm hearing is that, yes, you can still vote even if you didn't update, you didn't re-register to vote with your new address. You would just have to fill out an affidavit ballot, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But you should ideally, as soon as you move, re-register to vote.
Yes, yes, we encourage that. It's easier, and it'll be easier on the voter also.
Thank you. Anything to add, Dustin?
Well, I think the important thing to remember is if you're already registered, if you've already taken the time to register, then you'll be able to vote if you follow the steps that we give you. Either by doing an affidavit ballot at the new polling place, and in some rare cases, you may need a court order. So give us a call and we'll help you figure that out.
So what I'm hearing from both of you is sooner rather than later.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now election day is going to be on Tuesday, November the 2nd. When do the polls open and close that day?
They open at 6 a.m. and they close at 9 p.m.
Yeah. That is the largest polling hours in the nation.
Yes.
6 a.m. to 9 p.m. in New York is the largest in the nation.
So now how can people check on their voter registration before election day, and how can they find out where they can vote on November the 2nd?
That goes back to our website, onvote.net. Right at the top of the website, there's a button that says check your registration, and you can click on that and check it out. If you have trouble with doing that or you're not technologically savvy, give us a call, 315-435-VOTE, and we'll be able to help you out.
So 315-435-VOTE. If not, then we go back to the golden rule of ongov.net.
Onvote.net.
Vote.
Onvote.net. Okay, okay. So how about early voting? How does that work? Now, let's say, you can't come out on November the 2nd for whatever reason. How does early voting work? And is there more than one place for early voting? And how many days are there for early voting?
There's 9 days of early voting, and there's 6 polling locations across Onondaga County, and you could go to any of those polling locations. I live in the town of Geddes. I can go to the town of Lafayette and vote at Lafayette Fire Station. My ballot ID will be there, and I'll be able to vote there if I'm close to there, if I choose to vote early.
So those 6 sites that we have are Clay Town Hall, Camillus Town Hall. That's a new site this year. We moved from the Camillus Fire Station to the Town Hall. Southwest Community Center to the Syracuse Community Connections, DeWitt Town Hall, Armand Magdarelli Community Center, and Lafayette Fire Station #1. So they're pretty well situated across the county. We got one in the north, one in the west, one in the east, one in the south, and then 2 inside the city on the north and south side to try to get them as close to you as possible.
Thank you for that. Thank you for those details. That way people can know, can have some deeper insight into how early voting works. And if they can't show up on the 2nd, know that there's actually an avenue for you to actually be able to exercise your voice on a different day. So now, speaking of early voting and voting in general, we've been using this new voting technology now in the past 3 years, and now you can sign in on a computer screen. Sometimes people can be leery of the new technology. So how does that work, and what are the advantages to the new technology?
I think it's quicker. If the new technology is an iPad and they come in, they can look themselves up right on the iPad. The inspectors ask their first name and their last name, and they'll find them, and then they have to just compare signatures. Or if they have a card that they bring in that we send out each year as a mail check card, they can bring that in, and that'll scan in and it'll immediately pull up their name. And then they just sign it like you would sign the pads on, when you're at the grocery store.
Yeah, and if you bring your driver's license, you don't need it to vote in New York, but you can use it as like a fast pass where it just scans your barcode on it and it brings up your record and you can just get right through.
Okay. And are there any risks? Because some people might be concerned about hackers and their data being compromised. Can you tell us what kind of cybersecurity is available as far as the new voting technology goes?
So it's important to remember that we have the best protection against hacking votes ever created, and that's the paper ballot. We keep all of those paper ballots, and if there's ever an issue, we can hand count those paper ballots and have hand counted paper ballots in the past. The scanners that are at the polling place are never connected to the internet. No. So it's they're physically programmed for each election by our bipartisan teams of election workers. So they can't be hacked either because there's no way to hack into them. There is no modems. There is no internet connectivity on those scanners. And then finally, our electronic poll books do have internet connectivity because they connect back to the office, but we have paper backups in every polling place, as well as our server for our registration data is separate and kept separate from the electronic poll books. And so nobody can ever hack into our registration data. Again, it's on a server not connected to the internet.
Thank you for demystifying demystifying how electronic voting works and how safe it actually it is with the new technology. So now what happens though? Let's say, the election inspector, you do show up though, and the election inspector can't find your name on the computer system when they check in. What are the options if they can't find your name?
The inspectors usually call our office just to double check, and we can talk to the voter on the phone. And if we can't find them in the system, they have to, that would be they're not eligible to vote. They'll have to come down and do a court order with one of the judges that we have on call that day. And they fill out the court order, sit with the judge, talk to the judge, tell them why they weren't registered to vote. And they could also have been purged, which haven't voted in a few years. And the judge will give them a yes or a no. And then they'll be able to go to the polls if the judge says yes, and they'll be able to vote on the machine.
It's important to remember that if you're not satisfied with any help you're getting from the election inspectors, to give our office a call. We'll be taking calls all day on election day, or stop down. Do not give up on your right to vote. We will help you get the right avenue for your situation.
Okay, thank you. And let's say though, let's say they look up your information and you show up as an inactive. What does that mean, and what are your options if you're listed as an inactive voter?
So you're still eligible.
Yeah, you're still eligible. What happens is every year we send out a mail check card that to everybody's address. And when we get those mail checks back saying they don't live there anymore, then they get put in inactive status. And that means that when they go to vote on election day, they have to sign a piece of paper saying they are who they say they are and they live where they say they live. And then we're able to re-register them and count their vote after election day. It will be counted with the final tally. That's one of the reasons why we put inactive voters in the polling books, because it allows us to properly help them there at the polling place without having to call the boards of elections.
Can I ask a quick question back on the court orders? How many, do you have a percentage of when somebody comes down and seeks a court order to vote, what percentage of them are allowed to vote?
Usually it depends on the judge.
Yeah.
So it's hard to determine. Most of the time that I'm gonna say 99% of them
Yeah.
they send to vote.
It's very rare
Yeah.
that they don't count. Another myth out there is that people think that affidavit ballots don't count because we process them afterwards.
Yeah.
About 65 to 70% of all affidavit ballots we receive are counted properly. And of the ones that don't, we send you a letter letting you know why. And then we usually just register you to vote. So next time you vote, you won't have the same issue.
Right.
Okay. So now let's say, you go to the polls, right, to vote, and you don't have your New York State ID with you. You happen to lose it. You aren't driving on your way to the polls, it fell out your pocket while you were getting into the car. You don't have an ID. Do you need to bring ID to the polls in order to vote?
No, you do not. Not in New York State. The only time we ask for ID is if you are a first-time voter, and it'll say it on their registration that they require some kind of ID to say that they live at this address. Your license is the best because then they can just scan it in.
Right.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be a driver's license.
No.
Though. It could be a utility bill. It could be a lease. It could be a passport. We have like 10 different options out there for people to show ID. But again, that's usually only for a first-time voter who's never voted in our county before, never voted in New York State before. That is a person who would have to do ID. And not all of them have to, because we do a double check with Social Security and DMV before we register somebody. So it's very rare you need an ID, but in the cases that you do need one, there's plenty of options that you can bring along with you.
Okay, thank you. So now I want to go back to earlier. We talked about affidavit ballots. How do affidavit ballots work, and will they be counted, and if so, when?
So affidavit ballots are ballots that are collected at the polling place for a person who either isn't in the poll book or is at the wrong address in the poll book and is moved and needs an affidavit ballot. Those ballots then come back to the office. We then go through them on a bipartisan basis and determine whether that voter is eligible to cast a vote. And as I said before, 60 to 75% of the affidavit ballots we get in are actually cast because they are eligible to vote. They just went to, they moved and they didn't update their address. So, but the important thing to remember there is that you need to go to the polling place that you're supposed to vote at on election day. So if you go to check your registration and you see that the address is wrong, give us a call and we'll tell you what polling place that you need to go to do your affidavit ballot. That's the number one reason why an affidavit ballot is thrown out.
And that's on election day only. During early voting, you can still do an affidavit ballot and you can go to any of the 6 sites to do that.
Okay, thank you. So now, earlier we were talking about having to get, there might be a scenario where you have to get a court order to vote. And that can be intimidating for a lot of people to hear. You have to go to court, get a judge to essentially get a court order to be able to vote. And it can sound challenging, daunting, and complicated for people. So how does that work? And are there judges standing by? And if a person gets a court order to vote, then what should they do?
On election day, there are judges in our office to deal with this most of the time. During early voting, the judges stay at their chambers because there's not as many people coming down getting court orders during that time period. And it's very easy. It shouldn't be intimidating at all. You don't need a lawyer. Sometimes there's volunteer lawyers here to help people fill out their paperwork, but you don't need a lawyer. All you need is to tell the judge your story, why you weren't able to register on time. And 99% of the time, the judge is going to believe you and let you vote.
And Dustin, then do you have to go to your specific polling place to vote?
Yeah, so you can't vote here. So if it's only an hour before polls are closing, you really want to get down here really quick, because you do then have to drive to wherever the polling place is to vote. So getting about an hour before polls close, that's about the time where court orders start becoming almost impossible to get done.
Okay, so there's no docket, waiting for your name to show up on a docket, people versus unregistered voter
Nope.
or unregistered. Okay, pretty simple. You come into the office, there's a judge there, signs it, and you can go to your polling place and vote with these.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay. So now I want to transition though to a different subject now about election inspectors. And they're usually paid for working the polls on election day. So how do people become election inspectors, and do you need more people to actually become election inspectors, or right now they're at capacity? Tell us some more about that.
We always need more election inspectors every year. We lose, a couple hundred a year sometimes. So we encourage people to call our office. You can even go on I believe there's something on our website with election inspectors on it now. And we'll set you up for classes that you have to take. You have a 3-hour inspector class that you have to take to certify you. And then you can move up to a poll site manager or a voting machine specialist, which are VSS and PSNs, which have a little bit more authority inside the polling place. So that they can just call our office and sign up if they choose.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's important we're already full for this year. It's too late to be an inspector this year. But we put out about 1,200 to 1,500 inspectors every year between early voting and election day. So if you want to work, we'll get you slotted. You just have to take your certification course. And we now have yearly raises for the inspectors as well. It used to be the same pay forever, but we convinced the legislature last year to tie the pay to minimum wage. So people are getting raises every year now.
Okay.
Tell us, I mean, I think they get paid to come in for the training, and what do they get paid like for election day and for the early voting days?
Well,
It's a little different.
Yeah, it's a little different. It's basically about $14 an hour is what you get paid.
Okay. Which isn't a bad pay for the day. I know it's 50 and election day, it's 15 hours, but when that check for a couple $100 comes in, that's pretty nice.
Right?
Yeah, it's not hard work. You're not lifting boxes all day or standing over a grill. You're checking in your friends and neighbors, and that's it's a nice social opportunity for people too.
And that's the other thing, because we're doing very well on time, I believe, is that you've always tried to when people sign up to be inspectors, you always try to send them to polling places that are in the community that they live in.
Yes, we try our best to do that. We like inspectors that are able to move around the county also, because it makes it easier sometimes if we have to move you. But yeah, we try to keep them where they live.
Yeah, I know a couple of times, this is years back, people had said, they're not going out of the county. They're not out of the county, out of the town. They're going to stay right here, or they're not doing it. So it's really good that you do that. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we have husbands and wives that like to work together. They don't like to work apart.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
like we only have one car.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we have husbands and wives who want to work apart. We try to accommodate them.
That's true.
So let me ask you, there are 2 commissioners of the Board of Elections. Why is that? And why is this important to our voting system?
Well, we have a Democratic commissioner and a Republican commissioner. And this is very important. I think it's actually something New York does right, because we know that I can't do anything without Michele saying yes, and Michele can't do anything without I saying yes. And that allows our candidates and partisans to be assured that the votes are going to be counted accurately and reflect the will of the people. And we don't see a lot of this rigmarole that you see in other states where there's like protesting against the vote, because there are people from both sides at the tables, and it goes right down to inspectors on election day. And I think it allows people to have a more assurance that the proper things are happening.
Thank you, thank you. So now, we really appreciate your time today and helping us, helping people in the community to understand why it's important to vote and just how much access there is to vote. So what can you just restate though for folks who are participating with us today and for our general membership, what are the websites again for the Onondaga County Board of Elections? So if people have any questions or need resources, they'll be able to have that. And then also, if they don't have access to technology or just need to go to the Board of Elections office, where that is located.
So our website is onvote.net.
Yep.
Our phone number is 315-435-VOTE. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and also you can come down to our physical location at 1000 Erie Boulevard West. It's right after you pass Geddes Street, right before you get to the big railroad bridge overhead. You turn right into our office and you'll find us.
You know, if you don't, you know what, I'm gonna throw in a couple of questions. You know, we talked about early voting, and you know, once again, I think at the primaries, just go over. I think people, you know, once again, you go in and they print out a ballot, but you know, just go over and describe that again. And I believe there is some thought. Does this ever happen at the general elections where a ballot specific is printed?
Yeah, we have certain sites during the general election that these poll prints are at. And once they go inside the poll pad, a ballot is generated for them, which has all their district information on it. Nobody can know how you voted. Nobody knows that's your ballot. So it's very secure, but it just has a number on it. So we know what town and district that it has to be at. So your vote will count in those areas.
Yeah. And on early voting, every ballot is printed out separately, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. You know, the other thing is we've talked a little bit about it because we don't need an ID. And I was just like, you know, what are the checks and balances? I get a lot of people that say, well, I think we should have an ID here. And I say, well, we have signatures. And then I thought, well, my signature is probably from 60 years ago. Well, not quite 60, but about a good 50 years ago. And what are they comparing? I'm very proud of our system here. And I think I've been to enough sessions. We have very little, if any, fraud. Why is our system so good? I'd just like to hear from both of you. Why you think our system is so good that we really have such minimal fraud?
Well, I think it's the bipartisan checks. I think it's having both Republicans and Democratic inspectors there. If there's issues, we have to work it out and work it together. And I think knowing that keeps people from trying to test the system because they know that they're going to get caught. You know, we do update signatures as much as possible. We're working on a way to update signatures every year when somebody votes and they sign in on the pads. We're hopeful in the next couple of years we will have a way to just download the new signature automatically. We're working with our registration vendor on how to do that.
Michele, anything? Some people ask me, well, you got a lot of dead people registered. And I usually say, but the real issue is, did they vote? Usually,
That's correct. No.
And you know, and I was going to say, people, you know, and you mentioned something. I think we talk about an election, a Democrat election commissioner and a Republican one. I'm not sure people realize that at all the polling places in the election districts, you have a Democratic inspector and a Republican inspector.
Yes.
And that's why
Yes.
you're always in constant need of inspectors.
Yes. Yes. And I will use conservative
Oh.
also. I'll bring them in if I have to.
Yeah, I mean, luckily right now, there's a lot of Democrats in Onondaga County. We have the plurality, so I don't have as much problem recruiting Democrats. You know, Michele has some problems with Republicans who want to work inside the city. Sometimes I have problems with Democrats who want to work in rural areas, just because I don't have as many Democrats out there. But most of the time, we're able to fill them, you know, with what we got.
Did you want to talk a little bit about the absentee ballot process counting and when it's done and how you do it?
As far as when it's done, it all depends on what we have to do and if there's close races. If we have to sit in front of campaigns and open up ballots and show the campaigns the ballots and the envelopes, and it's a process if it comes down to a close race. But it's counted during a general election. We start counting 14 days after the election. During a primary, it's 7. That's when we start opening the ballots up. And then it just is, if it's nothing close, we're able to open them up quickly. And there is a bipartisan team that opens up these ballots also, and it's our staff. We put a Republican and a Democrat together and they open them up and check them and make sure everything's okay with the ballot. And once they're done with certain districts, they get counted through our clear ballot scanning machine. And that's how we process these votes.
Wonderful. Well, let's
Yeah, I
thank
think
you all.
she covered all of that. It's all good.
And I just want to say last year during the height of the COVID, well, we're still in the pandemic, but we're a little more protected with that. You did a fantastic job of spacing people, putting up shields, and we all had to wear masks. And it's, once again, if a candidate wants to have to be there with the absentee ballots, you usually have a Democrat and a Republican at the table. So it can't be just one side objecting. So it's, you've done a very good job. I've been at too many of these tables counting absentee ballots.
Yes, you have.
And the joke is that I was one of the ones that got quarantined last time too.
Yes.
But let's say, you guys did a very good job at really trying to protect people. It was none of us got COVID. They just was precautionary. So
Yes.
You did an excellent job of protecting us.
Yes. No, none of you guys got COVID, but our staff did.
Yeah. Okay,
Well,
I think that was it. Yeah, that was my only thing is, like, once again, I get so tired of people saying, you know, we should do IDs and how do we know? I think we have one of the safest voting systems because of actually because it is partisan versus nonpartisan.
Yes.
Great.
Go ahead, Rev. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah. So I was just going to say we've delivered all of our questions that are from our branch, and we thank you for taking the time out and for all the work you do to help to ensure that our election process that our election process, I guess the best way to describe it is one that flows smoothly and ensures that we have access to vote. So thank you so much for what you have done. And Diane, thank you so much for your participation and your leadership. And I think this conversation will be a source of help for our general membership as well as the wider community. So thank you so much for taking some time to be with us today.
Very welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Reverend. Thank you, Diane.
Yes, thank you guys.
And I know it's.
Well, thank you, Dustin and Michele, for sharing with us on this evening. And thank all of you for joining the NAACP General Membership Meeting. For more information, please log on to our website at www.syracusenaacp.com. So I want to thank just the information that was shared this evening. Please remember, it is your voice, it is your vote. And for more information about what Dustin and Michele shared on this evening, you can log on to onvote.net, not ongov, but onvote.net. You can also call them at 315-435-VOTE. Or if you'd like to show up at the Board of Elections, they're located at 1000 Erie Boulevard West. And again, that's on the screen. Also, we have early voting sites, polling hours and locations. And so the early voting sites, as they shared earlier, are the Camillus Fire Station, the Clay Town Hall Courtroom, DeWitt Town Hall Courtroom, Lafayette Fire Station, number 1, the Armand Magnarelli Community Center at McChesney Park, and the Syracuse Community Connection, that's Southwest Community Center. So again, please, please, please exercise your right to vote. Every vote counts. Thank you. Have a good evening.